Jung and I are famous bickering frenemies in the capital. Today he hid my homework, causing me to be scolded by the teacher. Tomorrow he puts ink in my pastries, making me sick to my stomach. I can't out-argue him or out-fight him, so I go back to the Dingyuan Marquis manor to complain every time. Let him taste the severity of family discipline. I thought this was just how we got along, a pair of little frenemies who bicker and fight. But until that day, when I saw with my own eyes how carefully and gently he helped Chin Sang-ru out of the carriage. Only then did I suddenly realize that the arrogant young Marquis Chin actually does know what it means to be tender and considerate, just not towards me. When Chin Jung came with Chin Sang-ru, I was embroidering my wedding dress in my room. The marriage arrangement with the Liu family is set for a month from now. Starting to embroider now is a bit rushed, but not too late. When Chin Jung saw the embroidery frame in my hands, his eyes widened as if he'd seen a ghost, not hiding the mockery in his tone at all. Wang Lisheng, did you fall a few days ago and damage your brain? You're actually doing needlework now, with your 3 days fishing, 2 days drying nets temperament. What kind of thing could you possibly embroider? Don't waste the Wang family's good needles and thread. A few years ago on Chin Jung's birthday, I promised to give him a personally embroidered pouch. He came to the manor daily to supervise, saying he was afraid I'd fool him with something a maid embroidered. But in reality, he secretly tore up my pattern book to start a fire for roasting sweet potatoes. By the time I discovered it, the book was already ruined beyond recognition. I cried for several days in anger, and naturally the matter of the pouch was dropped. But in Chin Jung's mouth, this incident gradually became evidence of my lack of determination and giving up halfway. Whenever someone in the capital praised me for my fine appearance and demeanor, calling me a model noble lady, he would always jump out and say, "Her, don't even mention it. 3 years ago she said she'd make me a pouch. To this day I haven't even seen a single thread. Womanly virtue, womanly speech, womanly appearance, womanly work. She is no good at any of them, and they call her a model noble lady. What a joke." He said it so often that even mother would sometimes be influenced and tease me about it, saying I couldn't even sit still long enough to embroider a pouch. How could I marry in the future and manage the household? In the past, I would have definitely gotten into a huge argument with Chin Jung without holding back, trying my best to make it clear that it was he who burned my things first. But now, I just looked at him coldly without saying a word, feeling nothing but indifference in my heart. Chin Jung was still going on and on belittling my embroidery. Wang Lisheng, I advise you to stop wasting your effort. Needlework also requires talent. That ugly duck you embroidered, even the rough servant girls in my household have skills 100 times more refined than yours. Don't tell me you think falling down the other day was embarrassing, and you want to use this method to save some face. I looked up and calmly interrupted his chatter. May I ask if young Master Chin is finished speaking? If there is nothing else, please leave. I still have work to do. Only then did Chin Jung notice my unusually calm expression. He frowned, seeming somewhat unaccustomed to it. Wait, Wang Lisheng, you're angry just like that. You weren't this petty before. Can't even take a joke anymore. Still throwing a tantrum over me, helping Sang-ro dismount? If you ask me, your fall wasn't entirely my fault. You didn't stand steady yourself either. Who told you to be so clumsy? Don't go running to my mother to tattle again. It is so annoying. Half a month ago, a few classmates from the academy arranged to go horseback riding in the countryside. When I arrived at the meeting place, Chin Jung was already exchanging poems with the young master from the Shen Hanlin family. Seeing me arrive, his eyes lit up. He walked over quickly, making a gesture to help me dismount. Chin Jung and I were childhood friends who grew up together. The elders of both families also intended to arrange a marriage alliance. At that moment, I thought he had finally reached an age where he knew how to be considerate. I couldn't help feeling a bit shy and gratified in my heart. But just as my foot relaxed, ready to transfer my weight to him, he grinned mischievously and suddenly pulled his hand back. I stumbled, lost my balance, and fell embarrassingly to the ground on the spot. Fortunately, my personal maid Yuer was quick-witted and fast-acting. She cushioned my fall with her own body, serving as a human cushion for me. That at least saved me some face, so I didn't fall too embarrassingly. Ashamed and annoyed, I got up from the ground, just about to lose my temper. But when I turned around, I saw him carefully and tenderly helping Chin Sang-ruo down from the carriage, afraid she might bump into anything. Chin Sangruo was the daughter of Madame Chin's concubine sister. She came from Jiangnan 3 months ago to seek refuge, and now lives in the Marquis Manor. Ever since she arrived in the capital, Qin Zheng has been constantly comparing me to her. His words full of put-downs. Wang Lisheng, a woman should be like cousin Sangru, gentle as water, considerate and understanding. Not like you, running to my mother to complain over every little thing, acting like a shrew. But clearly ever since I came of age, I've never spoken ill of him at the Marquis Manor again, all to preserve his dignity. Why is your voice so coarse? Compared to Sangruo, you sound like a man. It is awful to listen to. When I actually tried to speak softly and gently like Qin Sangruo, he mocked me loudly, as if wanting everyone to hear. Wang Lisheng ever heard of an ugly person imitating a beauty? That is exactly what you're doing now. Ugly people making a spectacle of themselves. That day on the spring outing, even though you cushioned my fall, I still ended up hurting myself. My knees were burning with pain. I thought that when Qin Zheng saw how disheveled I looked, he would at least apologize to me and say something conciliatory, but instead he pointed at me and laughed heartily, as if he'd seen the funniest joke in the world. Wang Lisheng, you're way too gullible. Did you really think this young master would help you up? How stupid. I looked at Qin Sangruo beside him, covering her lips in a light laugh, her eyes full of adoration. An unprecedented sourness spread from my heart to my throat, choking me until I couldn't breathe. It was as if a basin of ice-cold water from the dead of winter had poured down from above, completely extinguishing all the fantasies and expectations I'd held for him over the years. I called for a physician to examine my injuries and left with Yue, without looking back, not wanting to stay a moment longer. Behind me, a classmate who couldn't stand watching this urged him to apologize to me. Brother Chin, this joke went too far. Miss Wang is a young lady after all. Being humiliated in public is hard on her dignity. What you did was really inappropriate. You should go apologize to Miss Wang and coax her a bit. Qin Zheng waved his hand dismissively, his face full of certainty. It is nothing. Why worry about it? We've always gotten along like this since we were kids. It is no big deal. She'll just be mad for a few days and give me the cold shoulder when the time comes. If I don't go find her, won't she come running back to me on her own to make up anyway? The room was very quiet, with only the sound of needle and thread passing through fabric. I took back the embroidery frame from Qin Zheng's hands, turned around and sat down, my expression calm. Rest assured, young Master Qin. That day it was my own poor judgment of character, falling for your tricks. I can't blame anyone else. I won't go to the Marquis Manor to complain again. You can be at ease. I rarely spoke such harsh words to Qin Zheng, my tone carrying an unprecedented distance. He looked at me, momentarily dazed, as if he hadn't expected this reaction from me. Instead, it was Qin Sangruo, who had been standing quietly by his side, who spoke first, breaking the silence. Sister Wang, you're being too serious. It was just a joke between friends. Why must Sister Wang be so aggressive, even saying things like poor judge of character? Don't you know that if such words were to spread, how much would it affect Cousin's reputation? Those who don't know might think Cousin did something utterly unconscionable and unforgivable to Sister Wang. I'm being aggressive. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Although the Shang dynasty had open customs and didn't particularly emphasize strict separation between men and women, the demands and discipline imposed on women remained harsh. Every time Qin Zheng's pranks made me look foolish, I would go to the Marquise's manor to complain. In order to protect my own reputation, at first, Lady Qin would still severely reprimand Qin Zheng and back me up. But as time went on and it happened more frequently, she gradually became somewhat impatient, thinking I was making a mountain out of a molehill and lacked magnanimity. Later on, even though it was clearly Qin Zheng who was at fault first, who started the trouble first, not only did no one blame him, but everyone came to persuade me not to take it so seriously, to be more tolerant, as if I were the one being unreasonable and making trouble for no reason. My chest felt like it was stuffed with a ball of wet cotton, stifling and suffocating. Yet with nowhere to vent, I could only swallow this bitter pill myself, seeing that I was just focused on threading my needle and ignoring the two of them. He moved closer to my side, and like usual, nudged me with his elbow, with a hint of flattery and probing. Hey, are you really mad? All right, I'm apologizing to you. Okay, Stop pulling that face. But honestly, you didn't see yourself that day when you fell, sprawled out on all fours. It was hilarious. With that, he sat down beside me with a grin, waiting for me to easily forgive him like every other time, no matter how outrageous his actions were. I was still holding the needle, completely focused on embroidering, when he suddenly shoved me like that. The needle tip instantly pierced my fingertip. A drop of bright red blood seeped out, quickly staining the white feathers on top of the mandarin duck's head on the embroidered cloth, exceptionally glaring. Watching the bridal veil I had painstakingly embroidered all night get ruined like this, I took a deep breath and threw the needle and thread onto the table, my voice cold as ice shards. "Young Master Chin, I accept your apology. Can you leave now? My humble abode is too small to accommodate such a great Buddha." Seeing that I remained distant and cold, Qin Zheng's face showed some embarrassment, and his tone turned cold as well. "Wang Lisheng, stop putting on airs with me. Do you really not know what I came here for today?" I turned my back to him and stopped paying him any attention. Nor did I, like before, turn over every casual remark he made in my mind for ages, afraid of displeasing him. At this moment, I'm just calculating in my heart that this veil is so dirty, I'm afraid it can't be washed clean. I'll have to select new fabric and embroider it again. What rotten luck. Qin Zheng and I parted on bad terms. It wasn't until the afternoon when Mother came over to discuss with me the gift list for tomorrow's banquet at the Qin residence that I suddenly woke up and remembered. Tomorrow is actually Qin Zheng's 19th birthday. In previous years on his birthday, I would always start preparing gifts way in advance, racking my brains. Sometimes I'd go up the mountain myself to gather bamboo and personally make writing brushes. Sometimes I'd go to Lingyin Temple to kneel and pray, asking the master for blessed safety talismans. But Qin Zheng never cared about these heartfelt gestures of mine, and even found them somewhat distasteful, always saying I was petty, only giving him cheap things that could be bought anywhere, not valuable at all. Back then, I'd still foolishly argue with him. I've given you plenty of famous calligraphy, paintings, jade, and antiques on regular days. Aren't those all valuable? It is just that birthday gifts should prioritize sentiment. What is the point of giving things everyone has that can just be bought with money? Now thinking back, I'm afraid from start to finish, it was all my wishful thinking, just moving myself. The Wang and Qin families are old friends. The relationship has always been good, so keeping up appearances is still necessary. Early the next morning, Mother and I prepared the gifts and arrived at the Dingyuan Marquis Manor. Qin Zheng wore a brand new crimson brocade robe today, with a jade belt around his waist, which made his figure appear even more upright, a picture of a handsome young gentleman. He was accompanying Madame Qin at the entrance, welcoming guests. I lowered my eyes and followed behind Mother into the manor, pretending not to see him, but he acted as if nothing had happened, and took the initiative to come over. He grabbed the brocade box from my hand and lowered his voice to say in my ear, "See, I knew it. How could you possibly forget this young master's birthday? What good thing did you prepare this year? Cousin Sang-Ru personally made a pair of boots for me with such fine stitching. And yours, such a small box. Don't tell me it is that ugly thing you embroidered yesterday. Let me say this up front, something that ugly. I don't want it. It'd be embarrassing to take it out." Qin Zheng's complaints came to an abrupt halt the moment he opened the box. Seeing him frozen in place, staring blankly at the box, Madame Qin couldn't help but ask, "Qin Zheng, what has gotten into you today, child? You've been absent-minded and distracted since this morning." Thinking of those disdainful words Qin Zheng just said, I casually answered for him. In reply to Auntie, the young master is probably dissatisfied that Li Sheng's gift is too modest. Upon hearing this, Madame Qin took the box and glanced at it, immediately beaming with joy. "Oh my, this is top-quality mutton fat white jade paperweight. Exquisitely carved, a rare treasure, even in the palace. What more could you want, child?" After saying that, she affectionately pulled me close and praised profusely. "Our Li Sheng is so sensible and knows how to care for others, unlike this troublesome boy." Only Qin Zheng was left with a darkened face, holding that priceless paperweight in his hand, silently standing in place. His expression was inscrutable, not knowing what he was thinking. After the ladies arrived and gathered in the front hall to talk, we youngsters were tactfully sent out. In the back garden, a winding water banquet had already been set up, with paper, brushes, ink, and treasures prepared. Just waiting for Chin-jung, the birthday boy, to make his entrance and start today's poetry gathering. I found a quiet corner with a few close handkerchief friends to sit down, planning to have some intimate girl talk before marriage. But unexpectedly, Chin-jung and Chin Sang-ru followed over as well. The two sat at the table beside me, whispering in low voices. Their posture intimate. From time to time, they would subtly glance at me with their eyes, as if discussing something. Before long, Chin-jung walked over, holding an ink wash basin full of ink, pretending to pass by. As soon as I saw his barely suppressed upturned lips and the calculating gleam flashing in his eyes, I knew he was trying to use the same old trick to tease me and make me embarrass myself in public. Almost as an instinctive physical reaction, when that brush washer was about to pretend to slip and fall down, I quickly stood up and dodged to the side. But this way, Chin Sang-ruo, who had been sitting beside me watching the excitement, suffered the consequences with a splash sound. A full brush washer of black ink poured down solidly from the top of her head, flowing down her cheeks onto her dress, making her look exceptionally miserable. Chin Sang-ruo screamed, instantly becoming a drowned rat. Chin-jung was startled, not expecting to accidentally hurt his beloved, and turned to shout at me, "Wang Lisheng, you were sitting there perfectly fine. Why did you suddenly stand up?" I retreated to a safe area, straightened my skirt, and spoke coldly. "Your Highness, those words are truly amusing. If I didn't stand up to dodge, should I have sat there like a fool, waiting for you to pour ink all over me? This outfit of mine is newly made. I don't want it ruined, just like that." Chin-jung was left speechless by my retort, still wanting to argue unreasonably about something. But seeing the gazes of all the guests around gathering toward this direction, with expressions of curiosity and watching the drama unfold, he could only give up resentfully. Chin Sang-ruo had always presented herself as a gentle, refined lady, with a pitiful appearance. Now being doused with dirty ink all over her head and face in public, she felt utterly humiliated to the extreme. Covering her face and crying, she ran down, and when she changed clothes and came back, her eyes were still red, clearly having cried hard. The banquet officially began, and the guests exchanged poems one after another, creating a lively atmosphere. Chin-jung, as the birthday celebrant, had no interest in participating. Instead, he took advantage of the moment to forcibly pull me to a secluded spot behind the rockery. As soon as he opened his mouth, he self-righteously demanded that I apologize to Chin Sang-ru. "Apologize? Chin-jang, are you out of your mind?" I laughed instead of getting angry. "You're the one who didn't hold the thing steady and spilled the ink, so why should I apologize? If you hadn't suddenly stood up to dodge, how would the ink have splashed onto Sang-ru?" Chin-jung argued plausibly. "She has now made such a fool of herself in front of everyone. Isn't it all because of you? Then when you were scheming to pour ink on my head to make a fool of me earlier, why didn't you think about whether I would lose face, whether I would be embarrassed?" I pressed him with questions, step by step. Chin-jung looked at me, his expression somewhat irritated and impatient. "How is that the same? We've been joking around like this since we were kids. Everyone's seen you make a fool of yourself in public plenty of times. One more time doesn't matter. Sang-ru is thin-skinned. She is different. Wang Lisheng, you're being so petty about this today. Clearly you're still angry about that trivial matter of me not helping you up during the spring outing that day, and you're just making a big deal out of nothing." Listening to his outrageous words, my heart turned ice cold. When I was young, I accidentally fell into the water, and Chin-jung happened to pass by and jumped in to save me. He was only a 7-year-old child at the time. After desperately pushing me ashore, he choked on water himself, and was quite ill for a while, nearly leaving lasting health problems. So for all these years since then, no matter how excessively Chin-jung teased me or bullied me, I always remembered that life-saving grace, believing his heart wasn't bad, just that he was a bit mischievous. But now, looking at this man before me who can't tell right from wrong, and only knows how to shift responsibility onto me, I'm beginning to deeply doubt my judgment all these years. Perhaps that bit of so-called gratitude has long been worn away completely by his repeated hurts. I looked at him deeply one last time, my eyes no longer holding the affection of the past, only resolve. "Chin-jung, if being close childhood friends with you means I deserve to be teased and bullied by you without any boundaries, and have to make way and suffer grievances for the person you hold dear in your heart. Then I hope from now on, you can treat me as a stranger. This blessing is something I, Wang Lisheng, can no longer afford. After the banquet ended, Lady Qin specially asked my mother and me to stay at the manor to chat and catch up. The two of them drank tea in the flower hall, talking about recent interesting events in the capital and the household affairs of various families. I sat in the lower seat, listening with boredom, occasionally responding politely with a few words. After some pleasantries, Lady Qin put down her teacup, and her tone suddenly shifted as she got to the main point. Ah, time flies so fast. In the blink of an eye, these two children have reached the age where marriage can be discussed. Madam Wang, do you still remember that our two families made a verbal agreement back then? When the children grow up, if they have mutual affection, we'll arrange their marriage and strengthen the bond between our families. Ah, before Madam Qin could finish speaking, Qin Sangru, who was serving tea nearby, suddenly trembled and accidentally poured scalding tea onto the back of my hand. A piercing pain struck me, and I instinctively pushed away her hand that was pouring the tea, standing up instantly from the pain. With my push, Chen Sangru gracefully collapsed to the ground as if boneless, and the teapot in her hand shattered into pieces. She lifted her head, eyes brimming with tears, looking at everyone pitifully. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Sister Wang has such strong hands. You hurt me. Mother and Madam Qin were startled and hurried forward to check my injury. Fortunately, the tea had been sitting for a while and wasn't boiling hot. The scalded area only swelled up red quickly, but didn't immediately blister. Even so, Mother was so distressed that tears fell, and she quickly ordered someone to fetch burn ointment. Seeing this, Madam Qin couldn't show favoritism either, and could only scold Qin Sangruo on the ground with a stern face. How clumsy can you be? Can't even pour a cup of tea properly. Hurry up and apologize to Miss Wang. Qin Sangruo still maintained the posture of being pushed down by me, looking down and crying pitifully. She kept saying that it wasn't intentional, that her hand slipped. Just then, Qin Zheng strode in. He helped Qin Sangru up from the ground in one swift motion, shielding her behind him. Looking at my hand with an unfriendly tone, isn't it just getting scalded by some tea? What is the big deal? Is it worth making such a fuss? What is so serious about it? Just apply some medicine and it'll be fine. Besides, didn't she also push Sangruo just now? Sangruo's hurt from the fall too. If you ask me, let's just call it even. Nobody blame anybody. Hearing this, Mother's face immediately darkened, trembling all over with anger. Her own daughter got scalded, and not only was there no word of concern from the other party, but they even tried to turn the tables. Lady Qin also became truly angry, feeling that her son was being utterly unreasonable today. You bastard! Enough! Shut your mouth! Sangruo did something wrong and scalded someone. She should naturally apologize and make amends. What are you meddling in this for? Trying to show off your capability. Seeing that Lady Qin, who always doted on her, was truly angry, Qin Sangruo didn't dare to keep up the fragile act. She could only reluctantly step forward and perfunctorily bow to me with an apology. I watched this farce with cold eyes, having no intention of getting further entangled with them, waving my hand to indicate the matter was closed. I just want to leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. Seeing the awkward atmosphere, Lady Qin tried to ease the situation by forcibly bringing up the topic she hadn't finished earlier. Lady Wang, please don't take offense. This child Qin Zheng has been spoiled by me. Though he is quite unruly on ordinary days and speaks bluntly, his nature isn't bad. He is actually the best at taking care of his siblings at home, and is quite responsible. In the future, once he is married and matured, he'll surely be a good husband who takes care of his family. Hearing this, Qin Zheng reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He let out a cold laugh and rudely interrupted his own mother. Mother, why are you saying these things in front of them? As the ancients said, when taking a wife, choose a virtuous one. Wang Lisheng is lazy and spoiled by nature, throws tantrums at the drop of a hat, and always has to have the last word. Since childhood, she has loved going against me and has caused me no end of trouble. Because of her, how many beatings did I take from father when I was young? Have you forgotten? I will never marry this kind of woman. Bringing her home would only bring discord to the household. Though he was speaking to Lady Qin, his eyes were fixed straight on me, with a hint of provocation and spite. Seeing that I just kept my head down without speaking, as if I hadn't heard anything. His eyes flickered, as if he found it somewhat boring, and he awkwardly added, "Of course, there are exceptions to everything." If she could apologize to Sang-Roo right now for pushing her down just then. I might reluctantly consider this marriage proposal and give her a chance. As soon as these words were spoken, the room instantly fell into a deathly silence. Even a pin dropping on the ground could be heard. Mother was stunned by Chin Jung's presumptuous, disrespectful, and arrogant remarks. After a moment, she came to her senses and could no longer suppress the fury in her heart. She forcefully threw the teacup in her hand to the ground, shattering it to pieces. Tea splattered everywhere. "Madam Chin, is this the upbringing of your marquis household? Today, I've truly learned something. Since your son looks down on my Li Shang, then let's forget about this marriage proposal. Farewell." With that, Mother pulled me up, didn't even glance at the Chin mother and son, and directly stood up to leave in anger. After that day, Chin Jung and I completely cut off contact and never saw each other again. I peacefully prepared for my wedding at home, paying no attention to outside matters. February 17th, 3 days remained until my marriage to Lu Huayuan. I went to the academy to pack up my old manuscripts I no longer needed, planning to donate them to poor students. While passing by a rock garden, I unexpectedly overheard a conversation between Qin Jung and a few of his fair-weather friends. "Brother Qin, it is one thing for you to privately tease Wang Lisheng and make fun of her in your spare time. How did things escalate to her mother the other day? I heard Madame Wang was so angry she smashed a cup on the spot. The Wang family is currently riding high in the court. If Madame Wang truly gets angry with you and interferes, won't your marriage with Miss Wang fall through? What would you do then?" Qin Jung's voice sounded lazy, carrying a casual confidence. "Bah, why are you all worrying yourselves? Relax, I've got it under control. Madame Wang dotes on her only daughter Wang Lisheng the most, treats her like a precious treasure. As long as that silly girl Wang Lisheng herself is devoted to me. Insists she'll marry no one but me, and threatens to die if she can't have me. Even if Madame Wang is unhappy about it, what can she do in the end for her daughter's sake? Won't she have to obediently agree? Besides, 3 days from now is when the examination results will be announced. This young master will definitely have his name on the list, ranking high on the honor roll. When I go to the Wang residence to propose marriage with my academic honors, that'll be giving them tremendous face. I imagine Madame Wang will take the opportunity to back down gracefully, and won't say anything more. I stood in the shadows at the corner, quietly listening to these words. I felt my heart sink bit by bit, plunging into an icy cellar. So all these years, out of regard for old feelings, my repeated tolerance and concessions toward Qin Jung not only failed to earn his consideration, respect, and growth, but instead became leverage in his eyes to manipulate me at will. Even my mother, who gave birth to me and raised me, became someone he could casually scheme against and disrespect in his words. How ridiculous. How pathetic. At this very moment, I'm incredibly glad I decisively agreed to father's marriage arrangement with the Liu family back then. The family father and mother carefully selected for my lifelong happiness surely couldn't be wrong. Regardless of what Lu Huayuan's talents and appearance are like, or whether his family background is prestigious, at least his character is upright, and he knows how to respect people, which is acceptable enough. I took a deep breath and turned to leave. Who knew I didn't hold my luggage steady, accidentally dropping it on the ground with a dull thud. The voices behind the rockery stopped abruptly. Qin Jung heard the noise and suddenly looked this way. Seeing it was me, a trace of obvious panic and guilt flashed in his eyes. But soon, he forced himself to appear calm and put on a questioning posture. "Wang Lisheng, what are you doing hiding here, eavesdropping on our conversation? No manners at all. I'm telling you, don't think what you heard is what it is. The marriage proposal was just my mother's wishful thinking. I haven't agreed to it yet. You made Sang-Roo embarrass herself in public that day, and even pushed her down. That score hasn't been settled yet. If you don't sincerely apologize to her, this young master will never forgive you." Looking at his stubborn denial and blame-shifting face, the last ripple in my heart also calmed. I darkened my face and lost my temper at Qin Jung in front of everyone for the first time, no longer giving him any face. "Qin Jung, you think way too highly of yourself. My marriage is for my father and mother to decide. When is it your turn to point fingers? Why is your Chin family meddling in things that are none of your business? You should worry about cleaning up your own messes instead. If before I only thought Chin Jung was an unruly and intolerable person whose nature still needed discipline, then now I've come to detest that seemingly kind, but actually snobbish Madam Chin along with him. Last time at the Chin residence, Chin Jung was so presumptuous and rude that he drove my mother away in anger. As the lady of the house, she never came to our home afterward to apologize or mend the relationship. She must be thinking the same thing as Chin Jung. Convinced that I, Wang Lisheng, would marry no one but her son, and that the Wang family would ultimately have to compromise. So she feels she can manipulate my mother and me at will, with no need to take us seriously at all. Chin Jung's face flushed bright red after I humiliated him in front of all his friends, turning the color of liver. He said through gritted teeth, still trying to maintain his last bit of laughable pride, "Fine, Wang Lisheng, you've got guts. It just so happens that this young master doesn't want to marry a shrew, like you who doesn't know the meaning of gentleness either. If it weren't for my mother nagging in my ear every day, I wouldn't want to say a single word to you. Just seeing you annoys me." I let out a cold laugh, no longer bothering with his impotent rage, and turned to stride away. Seeing this, I really have to applaud the female lead. Well done. Listen to those words from that scumbag, saying things like, "Sure she won't marry anyone but me." It is really such a turn-off. This is exactly the kind of decisive resolve needed. What childhood sweethearts bond? It is worthless in the face of scheming and exploitation. Never look for a man in a trash heap. Look at our gentle and clear-headed Jaeyuan Liu. Now that is a high-quality man. I can't wait to see that scumbag get his face slapped tomorrow. In the blink of an eye, it was the day the results were posted, and the whole city was in an uproar. Father had already tested Lu Huayuan's knowledge in the study early on, and praised him profusely, knowing that he would definitely have his name on the list this time, with a boundless future ahead. He planned to stage a lively Shi to give the Lu family plenty of face, and also for the auspiciousness of double happiness. The moment the official posting the results left the palace gates, the news spread as if it had grown wings. The servants of the prince's mansion had already prepared celebratory robes, red silk, and a wedding sedan, following along with gongs and drums. Lu Huayuan was the son of one of father's old friends. Though his family had fallen on hard times, and he was now just a poor scholar, he hadn't given up on himself, but instead possessed even more integrity. Relying on the support of his elders and his own diligence, he had studied his way all the way to the capital, poor yet ever stronger, never abandoning his lofty aspirations. Truly a rare talented youth, before the marriage was preliminarily settled. I had once hidden far behind a screen, and caught a glimpse of him in the front hall courtyard. That day, Lu Huayuan wore a half-worn blue robe that had been washed until it faded, but remained spotlessly clean. His figure was tall and upright, sparse and elegant like green bamboo in the mountains, naturally carrying an air of refined grace. His voice was gentle as jade, neither servile nor overbearing as he declined Father's idea of immediately arranging the engagement and providing him financial support. Instead, he proactively proposed that the Wang family wait until the imperial examination results were announced before making the final decision, not to let personal matters interfere with official principles. If he could achieve scholarly honors and prove his ability, he would return to the manor openly and honorably to marry me, ensuring I would suffer no grievance. If he failed the examination, it would prove his learning was inadequate, and he was unworthy of the Wang family's young lady, and the marriage would be called off without any entanglement. Before the young man left that day, he raised his head and looked deeply in the direction of the screen. His voice was hoarse and low, carrying a barely perceptible tremor and a bewitching power. Fate is unpredictable. This junior fears, delaying the young lady's lifelong happiness. If we have affinity but no destiny, I hope the young lady will find another good match. With the Wang family's current standing in the capital and father's power and influence, I should have originally sought a well-matched marriage among the noble families in the capital. But I had long grown weary of the elaborate etiquette, scheming, and mutual calculations within those great households. So I begged my father and mother to find me a family with a simple household, or even bringing in a son-in-law would be fine. That is how this marriage arrangement with Lu Huayuan came about. But after meeting him, I was amazed by his character and learning. Yet my heart began to worry faintly. Someone as noble and upright as Lu Huayuan is destined for greatness. Would he really be willing to become a son-in-law of the Wang family and endure criticism? I secretly made up my mind that if Lu Huayuan regrets it later and feels wronged, at worst, after giving birth and leaving an heir for the Wang family, I'll let him go and divorce him, preserving his reputation. Today, the results were posted, and people from all over the city flooded the streets to watch the excitement. Lady Qin took Qin Zheng to the private room on the second floor of Heiyu Tower, across from the examination hall before dawn to wait. While drinking tea, she anxiously waited for news from the servant downstairs, who had squeezed into the crowd to check the results. Qin Zheng sat absent-mindedly by the square table, turning his teacup in his hand, his fingers tapping the table intermittently. His mind was still pondering what attitude he should adopt when going to the Wang family to propose marriage after passing the exam, something that wouldn't lose face while making that damn girl, Wang Lisheng, obediently bow her head and admit her mistake. Unable to think of a good plan, he grew increasingly irritated, and couldn't help but blame Wang Lisheng in his heart again. She really didn't know what got into her lately, always throwing tantrums and being willful over trivial matters. They had clearly grown up bickering and playing around like this since childhood, so why couldn't she take a joke all of a sudden? She just had to use the opportunity to put on airs, not knowing how to give him, her future husband, some face in front of outsiders. At this moment, a commotion suddenly arose on the street, and someone began announcing good news loudly. Qin Zheng couldn't help but lean forward to look out the window. But in the bustling crowd, he unexpectedly spotted several somewhat familiar faces, also struggling to squeeze to the front to check the rankings. He looked carefully and remembered that those people were the capable servants who usually attended to Wang's father. Seeing this scene, his originally irritated mood inexplicably improved quite a bit, and a smug smile curved at the corner of his mouth. The Wang family had no sons, only one daughter, Wang Lisheng. For the Wang household servants to be so actively coming to check the rankings today, other than to find out news about him, their future son-in-law, who else could it be for? It seemed that girl spoke decisively with her mouth, but in her heart she still cared about him after all. Just at this moment, the servant sent by the Qin household to check the rankings ran upstairs drenched in sweat to announce the good news. "Congratulations, madam. Congratulations, young master. Young master. Young master passed with high marks, ranked 17th in the second tier. What an excellent ranking." Hearing this, Qin Zheng's heart, which had been hanging in suspense, finally settled down, and his face revealed a triumphant smile. Ranked 17th in the second tier, though not comparable to the top scholar or second place among the noble sons in the capital, this was still a quite presentable achievement, enough for him to hold his head high before the Wang family. He was just about to urge his mother to prepare gifts and go to the Wang family to propose marriage, to strike while the iron is hot, when he heard Madame Qin put her palms together, chant a Buddhist invocation, and say excitedly, "Amitabha, ancestors bless us." I knew my son would amount to something. No, I must hurry to the great Shangguo temple to fulfill my vow. When I made the wish, I said I would fast and purify myself for 7 days. This cannot be delayed. We must show our sincerity. When Qin Zheng heard his mother was going to stay at the temple for 7 days, his brows furrowed. But then he recalled how Wang Lisheng had publicly contradicted him behind the academy's artificial hill that day, making him lose face, and the anger in his heart smooth over again. He thought, "Mother is right. He should indeed let Wang Lisheng stew for a few days. Let her get anxious. Let her know what it means that the husband is the wife's guide, so she'll be easier to discipline after entering the household. Anyway, she is right there and can't run away." The mother and son were each calculating their own wishful plans, but they didn't notice that downstairs, the already crowded throng suddenly erupted completely, with gongs and drums resounding. The Wang family servants had somehow squeezed their way to the bottom of the announcement board, and after clearly seeing the name, immediately excitedly pulled out the red celebratory robes and large red flowers they had prepared early, and shouted at the top of their lungs, "He passed! He passed! Our son-in-law passed! Lu Huayuan, young Master Lu, ranked 6th in the first class, passed the imperial examination. Quick, get young Master Lu changed into his wedding clothes. Let's head back to the manor with music and fanfare to hold the wedding. Double happiness." The joyous wedding procession quickly assembled and passed by the Chin family's carriage parked on the roadside with music and fanfare. Chin Jung heard the commotion and instinctively stuck his head out the window. He immediately spotted Lu Huayuan on a tall horse, draped in red silk. Looking spirited and proud, he recognized this person, a poor scholar from the Jiangwei area who had come to the capital a month ago to take the imperial examination. They had met a few times at the academy. He'd heard Lu was the son of his royal grandfather's old friend and was staying at the prince's manor. Chin Jung curled his lip disdainfully, thinking this poor scholar had pretty good luck to score even better than him on the exam. He wondered which short-sighted young lady in the capital had taken a fancy to him, staging this whole catching a son-in-law beneath the rankings drama today of all days. But Chin Jung's gaze fell on the steward in front of the horse, his face full of joy as he held the reins. Why did that person look so familiar? Wasn't that the head steward of the prince's manor? Chin Jung's heart suddenly jumped, and a strong sense of unease and panic welled up inside him. He couldn't care about appearances anymore, and kept turning back to confirm where the procession was headed. That direction was clearly heading straight for the prince's manor. Lady Chin noticed her son's unease and strange behavior, followed his gaze, and comforted him nonchalantly. "All right, stop looking. Don't worry." With Lu Huayuan's kind of rootless poor family background, the Wang family has high standards and would never marry off their only precious daughter to him. The Wang family may seem powerful now, but Lord Wang has no sons after all, and in the future this huge family fortune will have no one to inherit it. If they want to last long in the future, won't they still have to rely on our Marquis's manor for help and support? As for you, stay calm. If you rush over to propose marriage as soon as the results are announced, it'll make our Marquis's manor look too eager, losing face. After you're married, wouldn't that girl end up riding over your head, controlling you completely, unable to turn things around for the rest of your life? Chin Jung listened to his mother's words, felt they seemed to make sense, and reluctantly suppressed that inexplicable panic in his heart. But his mind kept replaying Wang Lisheng's recent cold and distant attitude toward him, as if she had become a different person. He always felt something was off, like he was missing some crucial piece. Yet he couldn't sort out his thoughts for the moment. Didn't know where to start. Night fell. The Wang manor was decorated with lanterns and colored lights. Full of joy, on the wedding night, red candles flickered, illuminating a room full of romance. I sat nervously on the wedding bed, wringing my handkerchief in my hands, palms slightly sweaty, until the veil was gently lifted by a steward, revealing Lu Huayuan's face, so handsome under the candlelight. It seemed almost unreal. He had drunk some wine today, his jade-white face tinged with a thin layer of crimson, his usually cold eyes now brimming with tenderness. As he gazed intently at me, he slowly drew closer, his gaze full of cherishing. I held my breath somewhat nervously, but he didn't make any of those abrupt, hasty moves from the storybooks. He simply reached out his hand, with extremely gentle movements, bit by bit removing the heavy phoenix crown and elaborate hairpins from my head. Every movement was filled with consideration and care, gradually transforming my anxious heart into peace of mind. When the last hairpin was removed, my waterfall like black hair cascaded down. He gently cupped my face, his slightly cool fingertips caressing my cheeks, his voice low and tender, carrying an unprecedented solemnity. "Li Sheng, today was too rushed. I've wronged you. Rest assured, from now on, with me here, I'll never let you suffer even the slightest grievance again." His gaze was clear and resolute, without the slightest reluctance or calculation, only full of treasuring. In that moment, my heart that had been hanging in suspense miraculously settled down. I looked at this man before me who would spend a lifetime with me. Suddenly, I felt that perhaps this step I took was truly the right one. Compared to that childhood friend, who only made me suspicious, sad, and waiting, this gentle man before me whose eyes are full of me is the one worth entrusting my life to. I gently leaned into his warm and broad embrace, listening to his steady and strong heartbeat. I softly responded, I trust you, husband." That night, the red candles burned out, and all was peaceful and well. On the other side, Chin Jung accompanied Lady Chin to stay at Daxiangguo Temple to worship Buddha. Daxiangguo Temple had flourishing incense offerings, and had always been the favorite place for high officials and nobles in the capital. Right after the imperial examination results were announced, many female family members of powerful families in the capital came here to burn incense and fulfill vows, praying for bright futures for the young men in their families. Everyone saw each other all the time, and occasionally, when they ran into each other outside meditation rooms or in the dining hall, they would stop to chat about everyday matters. That afternoon, the ladies rested at a pavilion. As they chatted, the topic naturally turned to the marriage matters of the children of various families in the capital. The wife of Prime Minister Shu had a face full of joy. Her daughter had just married well a few days ago, and she was in high spirits. She enthusiastically bragged to the other ladies about her new son-in-law. "Oh my, that new son-in-law of mine is the legitimate eldest son of the Peya family from Hedong, from a proper century-old aristocratic family. His character and learning are impeccable, and he is also extremely considerate toward my Wanner. What is even more rare is that he is also my aunt's stepson, which makes this a union of close families who know each other well. In this world, there is no better match than this. As a mother, I can finally rest easy." The other ladies, regardless of what they truly thought, all flattered her on the surface, offering auspicious words. Their words were half genuine congratulations, half undisguised envy and jealousy. After Madame Shu had enjoyed enough of everyone's flattery, her gaze shifted, and she spotted Madame Qin sitting to the side, drinking tea. She smiled and asked, wanting to redirect the conversation, "By the way, Madame Qin, I heard your family's heir also achieved quite a good ranking in this imperial examination. Now that his studies are accomplished, shouldn't you also be considering the important matter of marriage and establishing a family? I wonder, has the heir's marriage been settled yet?" Seeing the topic finally turn to her own son, whom she was so proud of, Madame Qin unhurriedly cleared her throat. She set down her teacup and said with feigned modesty, "Ah, speaking of this, gives me a headache. My Qin Zheng is outstanding in both appearance and talent. For his marriage, countless families in the capital have been sounding me out, both openly and discreetly. In my opinion, taking a wife is a major matter that concerns the family's prosperity or decline, so naturally one should choose carefully and select someone of equal social standing who is virtuous and gentle. But who knew that little girl from the Wang family would be so devoted to my Qin Zheng, chasing after him relentlessly? And that boy Qin Zheng is soft-hearted and sentimental, saying it is the bond of childhood sweethearts, and he can't bear to let down her infatuation. So now, he keeps pestering me to agree, wanting me to hurry to the Wang family to propose marriage as soon as I finish my pilgrimage and return to the capital, afraid of being too late." At this point, Lady Qin let out a deliberately helpless sigh, as if she had suffered some great grievance. "Alas, if I had known it would come to this, I shouldn't have let those two children get so close back then. But it is too late to say anything now. A grown son doesn't listen to his mother. Given Wang Lisheng's spoiled temperament, if my Qin Zheng doesn't marry her in the end, who knows how she'll cry and make a scene, causing a huge commotion throughout the city. I really have no choice but to reluctantly go along with them." Qin Zheng listened to his mother's half-true, half-false words that were clearly meant to elevate herself, while putting down the Wang family. He frowned almost imperceptibly, feeling somewhat uneasy about it. He wanted to speak up and explain a few things for Wang Lisheng, that she really wasn't as bad as his mother made her out to be. But then he remembered what his mother had taught him in private. "What do you know? That girl Wang Lisheng has been raised by her family to be lawless and arrogant, not knowing her place. If you don't want to be dominated by her after marriage, unable to hold your head up for the rest of your life, you have to dampen her spirit and suppress her temperament before the wedding. Let her know that marrying into our marquis household is her climbing up the social ladder, so she'll obediently listen in the future." Qin Zheng thought about it, and felt his mother's words seemed reasonable. After all, they were just polite words for outsiders to hear. For the sake of the marquis household's reputation, it didn't matter, so he closed his mouth again with peace of mind, tacitly accepting his mother's statement. Qin Zheng lowered his head, lost in his own thoughts, calculating the arrangements after returning to the capital. But he completely failed to notice that after Lady Qin finished speaking, everyone present suddenly fell into an eerie silence. The ladies exchanged glances with each other, looking at one another with expressions that became extremely strange and awkward. Some hesitated to speak, some lowered their heads to drink tea to hide their smiles. while others looked at the Chin family mother and son with sympathy. Since Lady Shu was the one who brought up this topic first, now that the atmosphere had become tense, she could only steel herself and step forward to break the silence. Qin happened to look up and saw her looking at him with a hesitant expression, her face full of difficulty. His heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he had an extremely bad premonition. The next second, Lady Shu hesitated, but finally spoke, her voice carrying a hint of uncertainty and disbelief. "This, Lady Qin, don't tell me you still don't know. It has been spreading all over the capital these past few days." Lady Qin's heart skipped a beat, forcing a smile as she asked, "Know what? Has something new happened in the capital again?" Lady Shu took a deep breath, as if dropping a bombshell. "It is about that eldest daughter of the Wang family, Wang Lixing. 3 days ago, on the day the imperial examination results were announced, she did something absolutely shocking. She selected a husband at the announcement board and chose that newly appointed scholar Lu Huayuan at first sight. I heard the Wang family prepared overnight, and that very day they held a lively wedding ceremony and got married. Now that Miss Wang is already the legitimate Mrs. Lu." "What?" Qin and Lady Qin both jumped up in shock at the same time, their teacups falling to the ground with a bang and shattering to pieces. Qin felt a boom in his head, his mind going completely blank. All that remained in his mind were the words, "got married," and "Mrs. Lu" echoing crazily. Qin didn't know how he left the great Xiangguo temple in a daze, nor how he frantically rushed into the Wang residence. When he burst into the back garden of the Wang residence with bloodshot eyes and gasping for breath, he immediately saw that under the warm spring sun, I was sitting with Lu Huayan at a stone table beneath the apricot tree, playing a game of chess. I didn't know how to play chess, and seeing that I was about to lose again, I started acting spoiled, pouting and clamoring for snacks, refusing to make another move. Lu Huayuan saw this and didn't call out my little scheme, just chuckled indulgently a few times and shook his head helplessly. He turned and instructed the maid to bring over several of my favorite snacks and a comfortable lounge chair. I lay down contentedly on the cushioned lounge chair, basking in the warm sunshine, leisurely sipping flower tea while opening my mouth to receive the peeled grapes. Lu Huayuan fed me, thinking happily to myself, "This life with a live-in husband is so good even immortals wouldn't trade it. I don't have to leave my parents, who've doted on me since childhood, to suffer and follow rules at someone else's house. I don't have to bother serving difficult in-laws or deal with complicated relationships. I can even lord it over my own household and be pampered like a child by my husband. It is really wonderful." Just as I was thinking this, my personal maid Yuer suddenly rushed in from outside the courtyard gate, looking panicked and shouting, "Miss! Young master! Something terrible has happened. Young Master Qin, he has gone crazy or something, insisting on barging in to see Miss. The servants at the gate couldn't stop him. He is already heading this way." Hearing this, I was startled and instinctively looked up. I saw Qin with his hair crown askew, clothes disheveled, gripping an unsheathed longsword in his hand, charging murderously through the courtyard gate. He spotted me at a glance, lounging comfortably on the recliner, with Lu Huayuan attending to me gently and attentively at my side. I felt a bit guilty, after all. He was my childhood friend, and instinctively snuck a glance at Lu Huayuan, afraid he might misunderstand and get angry, but he acted as if he hadn't seen anything, as if nothing had happened at all. Still calm and composed, he picked up a cup of hot tea, blew on it gently, brought it to my lips, and said softly, "Take your time eating, don't choke. Have some tea to soothe your throat." Seeing this painfully affectionate scene, Qin eyes instantly turned red, almost bleeding. He stared at me intently, his gaze scanning up and down at my hairstyle and attire that marked me as a married woman. As if suffering some tremendous betrayal and blow, he staggered back several steps in disbelief, his voice trembling badly. "Wang Lixing, you, how could you? How could you do this to me?" I pushed away the teacup Lu Huayuan offered and sat up straight, looking at him with a mix of bewilderment and amusement at his victim-like accusatory manner. "Qin, your words are truly amusing. Wasn't it you who said it yourself at the Qin residence in front of your mother? That you would never consider marrying a woman with such a willful temperament as mine, that bringing me home would only bring discord to the household. That being the case, My marrying someone else should be exactly what you wanted, shouldn't it? What are you doing here now? Putting on this abandoned victim act for whom? Addicted to playing pretend. Chin Jung was choked by my words, his face turning pale and flushed alternately. He suddenly rushed forward a few steps, his chest heaving violently from extreme anger and unwillingness. You clearly know those words I said were just said in anger. They were to deal with my mother. How could you take them seriously? Fine if you want to spite me, but why joke around with your own lifelong marriage? You married him just to get revenge on me, didn't you? To make me regret it, right? Saying this, he seemed to grasp at a lifeline. Looking at me with eager eyes, his tone urgent. Li Sheng, stop fooling around. I know you still have feelings for me in your heart. You're just acting impulsively, right? Divorce him right now. I can pretend none of this ever happened. I won't hold anything against you. I'll go back right away and have mother prepare generous gifts, come to propose tomorrow, and marry you back to the Marquis Manor in grand style as the heir's wife. Let's start over, okay? Looking at him still being so self-righteous, even at this moment I only felt incredibly ridiculous and desolate inside. I slowly turned around, my back to him, shaking my head helplessly, my voice calm without a ripple. Chin Jung, you think too highly of yourself and too little of me. I'm not you. I wouldn't make such a low-level joke with my lifelong matter, or the dignity of both families. Huayuan and I are a proper married couple by our parents, arrangement and matchmaker's words. We've exchanged betrothal cards, bowed to heaven and earth, and entered the bridal chamber. Everyone in the capital knows this. How could it be child's play that you can just divorce us with a word? You think a few words can make us divorce. What do you take me for? What do you take the Lu family for? And where does that leave the Wang family's dignity? Prince Chin, please leave and don't come again, lest it invite gossip. Having said that, I didn't spare him another glance and took the initiative to hold the hand of Lu Huayuan, who had been silently standing behind me all along. Fingers interlaced. Under his gentle and firm gaze, we turned and left the courtyard hand in hand. Chin Jung stood rooted to the spot, as if struck by lightning, unable to move. He watched helplessly as that perfect couple walked away hand in hand, their retreating figures so glaring, so resolute. His heart suddenly tightened, as if gripped hard by an invisible hand, the pain making it almost impossible for him to breathe. A fishy sweetness surged up his throat, his vision went black, and he actually fainted from sheer anger. After Chin Jung fainted in the courtyard, I didn't want to make a big deal of it, so I had the steward notify the Chin residents to take him away. But unexpectedly, after just 2 short hours, he appeared at the Wang residence's main gate again, as if nothing had happened. This time, he didn't bring his sword, just stood there with a dejected look on his face, refusing to leave no matter what. Fearing he might cause more trouble, I increased the guard several times over to keep the gate tightly secured. Only then did I feel at ease returning inside to dine with my parents and husband. I originally thought Chin Jung was just throwing a young master's tantrum, and after making a fuss for a while, with no one paying attention, he'd find it boring and leave on his own. But this time, he seemed determined to see me, standing at the gate until the morning of the second day. In the cold of early spring, he just stood there, all alone in the wind. Passers-by and neighbors around pointed at him, and talked among themselves. He acted as if he didn't see them, standing in place with a forlorn yet stubborn expression, motionless, like a statue of a wife waiting for her husband's return. By noon on the second day, even Madame Chin, who was worshipping Buddha at the Grand Xiangguo Temple, received the news. Unable to finish fulfilling her vows, she hurried back in a rush. After all, she was an elder and held an imperial title, so I couldn't be too neglectful and had no choice but to reluctantly go out to receive her. When I brought people to the gate, Madame Chin was holding Chin Jung's hand, earnestly trying to persuade him. My son, why are you doing this to yourself? There are thousands upon thousands of good women in the world, plenty of noble ladies from prestigious families. Why must it be Wang Lisheng and no one else? For such a woman to abuse your own body like this, is it worth it? It was mealtime right now. People were coming and going on the street. More and more onlookers gathered, pointing and gesturing in this direction. When Lady Chin saw me come out, the heartache for her son on her face instantly turned into hatred toward me. Not caring that this was in broad daylight with crowds around, she pointed at my nose and cursed bitterly. Wang Lisheng, you shameless wild girl, you're already married and became another man's wife. So why are you still seducing my son, clinging to him? Now seeing him in such a distracted state because of you, are you satisfied? Are you pleased with yourself? Is this how the Wang family raises their children? Absolutely disgraceful. I looked at this noble woman before me, who disregarded the facts, twisted the truth, and only knew how to throw dirt on me. The anger that had been building up in my heart for so long completely exploded, and I couldn't care less about respecting elders anymore. I let out a cold laugh and shot back mercilessly in front of everyone. If Lady Chin's memory is failing due to old age, I don't mind helping you recall. In today's drama, everyone here has sharp eyes and can see clearly who is playing the lead role. It is clearly your precious son Qin who is delusional, insisting on forcing me to divorce and marry him. I didn't even want to see his face and had people chase him away. Now from Madam's mouth, how did it become me seducing him? This ability to twist the truth, Madam. If you claim second place, I'm afraid no one would dare claim first. I took a deep breath and poured out all the grievances I'd suffered over these years. Thank goodness heaven opened its eyes and didn't let me marry Qin and enter your marquis household. Otherwise, with a mother-in-law like you who can't tell right from wrong and only knows how to torment her daughter-in-law bearing down from above, I don't know how much humiliation I'd have to endure in the future, how many bitter days I'd have to live through. Madam Qin was used to being flattered daily and had never been talked back to like this. Now being confronted so mercilessly by me in public, she trembled with rage, her eyes nearly bulging out, her fingers shaking as she pointed at me. She cursed without thinking. You, shrew, what a sharp tongue. Wang Lisheng, who in the entire capital doesn't know you're lacking in character. Act crazy, without a shred of proper lady's demeanor. At such a young age, shamelessly chasing after my son every day, throwing yourself at him and still no one wants you. It is only because my son is pure-hearted that he was deceived by a scheming woman like you. Falling for your tricks, enough. Qin, who had been silent with his head lowered, suddenly shouted loudly, interrupting Madam Qin's foul language. He raised his head, eyes red-rimmed, voice hoarse as he pleaded. Enough, mother. Stop talking. I beg you. It is me who wronged Li Sheng. It is all my fault. I just want to have a proper talk with her and clear up the misunderstanding. Can you please stop making trouble here? Can you leave me some dignity? It was almost time for Lu Huayuan to return home from court. The crowd of onlookers around kept growing, surrounding the entrance of the prince's mansion so tightly that not even water could pass through, all waiting to watch this drama of wealthy family grudges unfold. I looked expressionlessly at this mother and son blaming each other before me, feeling nothing but extreme annoyance and exhaustion in my heart. I looked coldly at Qin and issued my final ultimatum. Qin, whatever you have to say it here. Make things clear in front of everyone, so your mother won't go around gossiping and slandering my reputation later. If you can't make things clear today, don't come again in the future. Qin froze, seemingly not expecting me to be so resolute. He looked at me stubbornly, his eyes full of confusion and pain. Li Sheng, I just don't understand, really don't understand. Everything was fine before, nothing happened. Why did you suddenly change your mind and insist on marrying someone else? Not even giving me a chance to explain, before I could answer, Yu'er, who had been standing behind me, couldn't take it anymore and couldn't help but jump out and speak first. She put her hands on her hips, looking at Qin with a mocking expression. Oh my, young Master Qin's memory is truly that of a noble who forgets so easily. What do you mean nothing happened? Do you need this servant to help you recall one by one all those good deeds you've done? 2 months ago, during the spring outing, you pretended to help our young lady dismount from her horse, but deliberately let go halfway, nearly causing our young lady to fall flat on her face in front of everyone. Afterwards, not only did you show no remorse, you didn't even apologize, and you even joined forces with that cousin Qin to mock our young lady together. A month ago, at the heir's birthday banquet, our young lady kindly prepared generous gifts to attend and celebrate your birthday. But what did the heir do? He actually tried to pour ink on our young lady's head in front of all the guests to humiliate her. Fortunately, our young lady was quick-witted and dodged it, preventing you from succeeding. Guess what happened next, dear neighbors? This heir Qin got upset instead, and turned around to question our young lady about why she dodged, causing that ink to spill on his precious darling cousin. He relentlessly insisted on forcing our young lady to apologize and make amends to that so-called cousin. Each and every incident has the heir forgotten them all, and this can be called nothing happened. Yuer was eloquent, and with each sentence she spoke, Chin Jung's face turned a shade paler. Having these matters exposed publicly, he only felt his face burning hot, as if he'd been slapped hard several times. He opened his mouth, trying to defend himself, but could only murmur feebly and palely. But we've always played around like this since we were little. I didn't mean any harm. Finally, someone in the crowd couldn't stand it anymore and began whispering, This young Master Chin has gone too far. Where is the joke in this? It is clearly just bullying. Exactly. He has got the nerve to say they've always been like this since childhood. So just because Miss Wang has a good temper, she is supposed to put up with his bullying for life without fighting back. If you ask me, he has got bad intentions, and he still wants her to marry him. Has he lost his mind? What decent girl would want to marry someone like that? You guys don't get it. The way I see it, he was doing it on purpose from the start. Before the marriage, he wanted to use these tactics to test Miss Wang's limits, set rules for her, suppress the Wang family spirit, so he could control her later. Never expected it to backfire. Miss Wang saw right through him, stopped playing along, and married someone better. Now he is panicking, isn't he? CSK, these lowly, underhanded tactics, who knows where he learned them from? What a disgrace to decency. Who else could it be? Just look at his unreasonable mother, like son. The murmurs and mocking laughter from the crowd grew louder and louder, like sharp knives stabbing into the hearts of the Chin family mother and son. Madam Chin had never suffered such humiliation of being condemned by everyone. She was already livid, her face ashen, and had retreated into the carriage, not daring to show herself. Only Chin Jung was left standing alone in place, facing everyone's accusations, feebly defending himself. It is not like that. You're talking nonsense. I just, looking at this man before me, so flustered he couldn't even come up with a complete excuse. I no longer felt any trace of our past affection, only overwhelming disgust and relief. Chin Jung, enough. You keep saying you like me, that you don't want to lose me. But everything you've done has never once considered my feelings or situation. Today, in front of everyone, I'll ask you one last question. You used to belittle and mock me in front of others, taking pleasure in it. Is it true, as everyone says, that you were deliberately testing my limits, trying to suppress me before marriage so you could have the upper hand in our marriage later? You don't need to say any other unnecessary nonsense. Just answer me yes or no. Chin Jung looked at my cold and resolute eyes, knowing there was no escaping today. He opened his mouth, his throat seeming blocked by something. His hands hanging at his sides clenched into tight fists, knuckles white, trembling slightly. After a long while, as if finally resigned to his fate, he closed his eyes in pain. His voice hoarse as if scraped by sandpaper, he struggled to utter that word. Yes. Getting this answer, the last trace of doubt in my heart finally settled. I shook my head, eyes full of disappointment, and issued the final order to leave. Prince Chin, since we've come to this point, if you want to talk, I'll talk with you. You once saved my life when you were young. All the grievances I've endured and concessions I've made over these years, I'll consider them as repayment for that life-saving favor. From now on, you go your way, and I'll go mine. Let's wipe the slate clean of all past matters, and we owe each other nothing. I, Lu, am unworthy, but I am now the son-in-law of the Wang family and Li Sheng's husband. I hope the prince will conduct himself with dignity and stop pestering another man's wife, lest it tarnish the Marquis' Manor's reputation and become a laughingstock. Upon hearing this, Chin Jung's body stiffened. He suddenly opened his eyes to look at me. His gaze filled with unwillingness and despair. He wanted to say something more to salvage the situation. Just then, a familiar voice suddenly came from behind me not far away, cold as shattered jade striking ice, carrying an undeniable authority. Prince Chin truly never changes, even in such circumstances. You still refuse to give up. At this point, does Prince Chin still not want to explain the truth of what happened back then? I turned around in delighted surprise. I saw that Lu Huayuan had somehow already left court and arrived at the entrance. He wore a brand new crow-blue court robe, a court crown on his head, his posture upright as a pine tree. In his usually gentle jade-like features, there was now a rare trace of sharp fierceness that made one dare not look directly at him. He strode over to my side, naturally wrapping his arm around my shoulder, standing in front of me in an absolutely possessive and protective posture. Then, with a wave of his hand, the attendants behind him shoved a servant in gray robes, bound hand and foot, to Qinzhang's feet like tossing out garbage. That servant looked somewhat familiar to me. After thinking carefully, I recognized him as the personal study companion who had been by Qinzhang's side since childhood. But right now, he was trembling all over like chaff being sifted. Where was even half of his usual arrogant swagger? He lay prostrate on the ground, looking up at Lu Huayuan, with eyes full of bone-deep terror, as if he were seeing some death-claiming king of hell. He frantically kowtowed with loud thumping sounds, begging for mercy. "Spare my life, my lord! Spare my life, my lord! This slave confesses. This slave will confesses everything. Just spare my life, my lord." Everyone present was stunned by this sudden turn of events, craning their necks to look at the servant on the ground. The moment Qinzhang saw the servant appear, his face instantly turned deathly pale as paper, completely bloodless. A feeling of overwhelming panic surged through his heart. Under Lu Huayuan's icy gaze, the servant wore a mournful expression and spilled out the truth from back then, like beans pouring from a bamboo tube. That year when Miss Wang fell into the water. Actually, it wasn't our young master who saved her at all. It was another kind young master passing by who jumped in to save her. This servant and the young master were terrified at the time. We only helped by shouting for people from the shore. As soon as these words came out, the crowd instantly erupted. I stared wide-eyed in disbelief, looking at Qinzhang. So the life-saving benefactor I've been thinking about all these years was actually someone else, and he actually took credit for it all these years, enjoying my gratitude and the Wang family's care without any guilt. However, even more explosive news was yet to come. The servant spoke halfway, then looked up and stole a glance at Qinzhang's murderous gaze, scared into shrinking his neck again and stammering. And with a cold snort from Lu Huayuan, he was startled and shouted loudly with his eyes closed. And the reason Miss Wang slipped and fell into the water back then was all because the young master was in a bad mood that day and wanted to play a prank, deliberately ordering this servant to pour oil on the stone path by the lake. Miss Wang slipped down because she stepped on the oil. This plot twist is absolutely explosive. Turns out even the only life-saving grace filter was fake, and it was even deliberate harm. Qinzhang deliberately splashed oil to hurt someone, then shamelessly took credit for saving their life, deceiving them for all these years of gratitude and care, selfish and vicious to the extreme. Never thought he'd turn out to be a complete fraud and villain, deliberately splashing oil to make someone fall in the water, then stealing credit from the real savior to reap the benefits. This scumbag truly deserves to be utterly disgraced, and our Lu Huayuan isn't just heaven-sent. He is actually the real childhood friend, plus real life-saving benefactor. This plot closure is just too perfect. The truth came to light. All around, there was an uproar as everyone looked at Qinzhang like they were looking at a monster. So the so-called life-saving grace was actually a complete fraud and deliberate harm all along. I felt like all the blood in my body had been drained, my hands and feet ice cold. I stared hard at Qinzhang, my eyes full of shock and disgust. At this moment, Qinzhang felt the world spinning, his ears buzzing. In his mind, he couldn't help but recall what happened back then, after that incident. His mother gripping his shoulders tightly, her expression crazed as she instructed him. "Qinzhang, remember this. This matter stays buried in your stomach. You can't tell anyone. If anyone else asks, you must insist to the death that you jumped in without hesitation and rescued the Wang family girl yourself. The Marquis Manor has declined now, getting worse day by day. Your father passed away early, and we orphans and widows are struggling in this capital city. If you become the Wang family's lifesaver, the Wang family will surely protect us out of gratitude. Your future prospects, Mother won't have to worry about anymore." Qinzhang listened to the tide of mockery and curses from everyone around him, looking at my eyes filled with extreme disgust. His last psychological defense finally completely collapsed. He let out a loud cry, frantically pushed through the crowd like a madman, and stumbled out, his figure utterly wretched. He knew that this time, he was truly finished. Between him and Wang Lisheng, separated by this bloody truth and years of deception. In this life and the next, there was no longer any possibility. I watched Tin Zheng's departing figure, my heart filled with mixed feelings, somewhat lost and disappointed for my years of misplaced devotion, but more than that was an unprecedented sense of relief and ease. I knew it. Someone who in their youth could risk their own life to save others without regard for personal safety. How could their nature later become so despicable and selfish? So it turns out, all of this was a complete lie and mistake from the very beginning. Now that the dream has ended, I should start a new life too. The onlooking crowd, seeing there was no more excitement to watch, gradually dispersed, leaving only gossip all over the ground. Lu Huayuan didn't ask much, just silently accompanied me, holding my hand, quietly walking along the garden path back to our room. The evening breeze brushed against our faces, carrying a hint of coolness. Some blurry fragments suddenly flashed through my mind, and I was startled as I suddenly remembered. It turned out that my first encounter with Lu Huayuan was not behind the screen at the academy a few days ago. Many, many years ago, before I fell into the water and got sick, he had once accompanied his mother to visit and stay at our residence for a period of time. Back then he still called me Little Sister Li Sheng, often taking me to play in the garden, catching butterflies for me, and accompanying me on the swing. It is just that later I fell into the water and got seriously ill, with a high fever that wouldn't break, and after waking up I forgot many things. I also completely forgot about him, this former little brother. I turned my head to look at his refined and handsome profile in the twilight, and a warm current surged in my heart. So after going round and round, fate had long been decided. The person who truly saved me had always been by my side, waiting to reunite with me. Thinking of this, I couldn't help feeling somewhat guilty and uneasy. I stopped walking and hesitantly opened my mouth to probe. Lu Huayuan. Now that the truth is out, no matter how you put it, you're my lifesaver. If you feel that marrying into the Wang family has wronged your talents, and in the future you want to divorce and pursue a better future, just speak up and tell me. I absolutely won't stop you. I'll definitely make it happen. Before I could finish speaking, the air around us instantly froze, and the temperature plummeted. Lu Huayuan stopped in his tracks, turned around, and looked down at me with a heavy gaze. The corner of his mouth curved into a dangerous arc, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Oh, is this how Madame treats her lifesaver? Does Madame know what this behavior is called? His stare made my heart race with unease. I instinctively shrank my neck and stammered. What? He suddenly stepped closer, pinning me against the rockery behind me. His warm breath sprayed against my ear as he ground out 4 words through clenched teeth. This is called repaying kindness with enmity, causing chaos, then abandoning. Does Madame think she can use Lu and then kick him aside? Where in this world is there such a cheap deal? I froze, only then realizing he was taking this opportunity to express his dissatisfaction and jealousy. Seeing him act all proud and sulky like this, that tiny bit of guilt in my heart instantly vanished, and I couldn't help but burst out laughing. I wrapped my arms around his waist in return, stood on my tiptoes, and planted an appeasing kiss on his cheek, softening my voice to coax him. Oh, come on, husband, don't be angry. I was just saying it casually, testing you a bit. I finally caught such a good husband like you. How could I bear to let go? Let's go back to our room right now, and I'll make it up to you properly. Okay. That night, I really had to work my tongue, acting all cute and making promises, agreeing to a whole series of unequal treaties about keeping him company to compose poetry and paint. It took me quite a while before I finally managed to coax my jealous husband into a good mood. Of course, the warmth and sweetness in all, that is not something to be shared with outsiders. The next time I heard news of Xinjiang, it was already a month later. The scandalous truth that came to light in front of the prince's manor that day spread like wildfire throughout the entire capital's streets and alleys, becoming the laughingstock of people's idle gossip. The Dingyuan Marquis Manor's reputation was completely ruined. This matter even alarmed the court censors. When the emperor learned the truth, he flew into a rage, harshly condemning Xinjiang for his poor character, deceiving the world and stealing fame. unfit to serve as an official. He immediately issued an edict stripping him of all the honors he had gained from this imperial examination, and ordered his name to be placed on a blacklist, forbidding him from taking the imperial examinations, or entering officialdom again until he turned 50. This basically ruined half his life's prospects. After this incident, Xinjiang felt too ashamed to show his face in the capital and became like a rat crossing the street. He hid in the manor, all day drowning his sorrows in alcohol, living in a drunken stupor, completely wasted as a person. Lady Qin only had this one son, and seeing him in such a hopeless state, she was both anxious and furious. No amount of persuasion could move him. No beating was allowed, and she washed her face with tears all day long. In the end, with no other choice, she thought to quickly arrange his marriage, bring back a tough wife to manage him, and at least leave an heir for the Marquis estate, and cultivate a qualified successor. It is just a pity that the Marquis estate's reputation is now completely ruined, and they're despised by the officials. All the families in the capital, with even a bit of standing, know how she and her son schemed against me and the Wang family back then. Who would dare push their own good daughter into a fire pit? Lady Qin hit walls everywhere, and with no other option, could only set her sights on her niece Qin Sangruo, who was living under someone else's roof. After all, she is from her own maternal family, easy to control. So, under Lady Qin's forceful arrangements, ignoring Qin Sangruo's crying and Xinjiang's coldness, she forcibly pressed the two into marriage, and hastily held the wedding. Yue came back and described it vividly. On the wedding day, the Qin estate was cold and deserted, with hardly any guests showing up. The groom Xinjiang was dead drunk the entire day, didn't even show up for the ceremony, and had someone use a rooster as his substitute for the bows. The bride Qin Sangruo cried the whole way sitting in the bridal sedan, and even after entering the gate, her face was full of unwillingness and resentment. With this resentful couple thrown together, the days ahead at the Marquis estate are sure to be quite a show. Who knows if they'll be able to fulfill Lady Qin's wishes in the future and give birth to a good heir to save the Marquis estate from its decline. I leaned against the cushioned chaise lounge, casually flipping through a travel journal in my hand, listening to Yue beside me endlessly gossiping about all these annoying matters of the Qin household. I just found it somewhat amusing and wistful. I couldn't help but tease her. "You little girl, I don't usually see you gossip this much. How come you're so invested in their family affairs now?" Yue pouted, saying with an indignant look on her face. "Humph, this servant just can't stand their ugly mugs. Miss, you don't know, that day when he caused you to fall, this servant became his cushion, and it really did me in. My back was nearly twisted off. I had to lie in bed for a whole 2 months before I recovered completely. It hurt like hell. Now this servant just loves hearing about their misfortunes. Seeing them suffer and have bad luck makes this servant feel so satisfied and happy. Besides," Yue suddenly leaned close to me, lowered her voice, and said with a mysterious look, "And also, this was specifically instructed by the young master. The young master said that now that Miss is with child, it is exactly the time when you need rest and entertainment, and it is not convenient to move around much. He told this servant to go out more and gather these kinds of satisfying fresh stories, to bring back and tell Miss, to entertain you and keep you in good spirits. He said, it is also good for the one in your belly." Outside the window, the twilight was hazy, and the sunset glow dyed half the sky red. The apricot blossoms in the courtyard had already withered, and the branches were covered with green little fruits. Another year, spring has gone, and summer has arrived. Alright, that is all for today's story. I believe Li Sheng and our Lord Lu will definitely welcome their new life in that parallel space-time, and continue their happy and sweet life together. Woo-woo. This story really hit the spot for me. The female lead is decisive and doesn't overthink. The villains get what they deserve, which is so satisfying. Reading it was just smooth sailing. I wonder which part you guys found most satisfying. Feel free to discuss it with me like crazy. I am Faye. See you in the next good book. Bye-bye.